How's it going, everybody? My name is Lucky Buns, and in today's video we're going to be going over everything you need to know for Cyndaquil Community Day Classic. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so first of all, this Com Day Classic is going to be taking place on June 22nd from 2 to 5 p.m. local time. The bonuses are going to be as follows. We're going to get 3-hour lure modules and incense like normal. Now for Com Day Classics, they're actually kind of switching up the typical special bonuses. So instead of like a 3x catch Stardust or like a 3x catch experience, we're actually going to get 2x catch Stardust and 2x catch experience. So personally speaking, I'm probably not going to be using any star pieces or lucky eggs during this Com Day, and I'm just going to wait until a regular Com Day when we get a 3x catch experience bonus or a 3x catch Stardust bonus. If you guys have extra resources though, by all means feel free to use them. Now we're also going to be getting 2 special trades thanks to the seasonal bonus. This has nothing to do with the Com Day bonus, but I felt like it was worth mentioning. Typically for most Com Day Classics, there's actually no additional special trade or reduced Stardust when trading. Now we're also going to be getting 5 free Cyndaquil from Snapshot, and the shiny rate is going to be boosted at 1 out of 25. Now we're also going to be having Cyndaquil showcases, so I would highly recommend holding onto your double extra large Cyndaquil for any showcases during this event. It's most likely going to be pretty competitive, but then again, I don't really feel like that many people are going to be playing this Com Day just because it is a classic and it's Cyndaquil. Like, I personally love Cyndaquil, you guys know how much I love Cyndaquil, but I think for the rest of the player base, this is less desirable. So with that being said, this is going to be a good time to actually try and place either first or second in multiple showcases, because if you do, you can get up to like 3-star pieces, a few lure modules. There's so many good items that you actually get if you place first or second in multiple of these. Now you guys can also get more encounters with Cyndaquil by doing event-themed field research quests throughout the day. This is actually a great way to get a hundo or potentially even a shundo, because the floor IVs are going to be 10, 10, 10 from field research. The hundo CP that you want to look out for Cyndaquil and field research is going to be 420 CP, which is honestly kind of cool. Next up, let's go over the special research ticket you guys can buy for $1. So you can usually get enough premium items back to make that $1 worth it, and you can also gift these to your friends if you actually kind of want them to play with you during the event. It's pretty cheap, all things considered, and it definitely makes a casual player's experience a lot better. I'm not sponsored or anything though, so this is just for my own experience when I actually go out to play. If you don't end up getting the ticket, that's totally fine. You aren't really missing out on too much either. Now, like most community days, we're also going to be having special event boxes featured in the store. So the first one is going to be 1350 Pokecoins. This one's going to give you 50 Ultra Balls, 5 Super Incubators, 5 Lucky Eggs, and an Elite Charge TM. And the second box is going to be 480 Pokecoins, and this one's going to give you 30 Ultra Balls, 1 Incense, 1 Lure Module, and 3 Super Incubators. Now for those of you who are considering getting that 1350 event box for the Elite Charge TM, I would actually recommend going through the web store instead. There's going to be an Ultra Com Day box that's going to give you an Elite Charge TM plus the special research ticket for only $5. Now you guys can also get free Elite TMs from GBL every season, so if you don't want to spend any money, this would be your next best option. And if you're not really sure which Pokemon are actually the best to actually spend your Elite TMs on in Pokemon Go, I've actually put together 3 in-depth videos going over the best Pokemon for raids, Great League, and Ultra League. I'm going to leave those linked down below. Next up, let's go over the exclusive moveset that Typhlosion is going to be getting during this Com Day. So you're going to have from 2 to 7 p.m. to actually get your Typhlosion with this moveset, and then it's going to be Blast Burn. Now how good is Blast Burn on Typhlosion? So this is actually a massive upgrade for Typhlosion. I believe the best moveset outside of Blast Burn is going to be Overheat, which really isn't that good. Blast Burn definitely takes Typhlosion to the next level in both raids as well as PvP, and we're going to talk about the meta relevance here in just a second. But yeah, you definitely want to make sure that you evolve this Pokemon before 7 p.m. It's a little bit less time than a typical Com Day, so definitely set a reminder if you feel like you need to. Now with that being said, let's take a look at Typhlosion in the raid/gym meta, and then we'll take a look at PvP right after. So I'm going to keep it real here, guys. Typhlosion is not the best, but it's actually far from being the worst either, especially when you factor in accessibility amongst other fire-type Pokemon in the game, like top fire-type Pokemon. This is actually a lot better than you would think for new/returning players. Meta-relevant fire-type Pokemon are actually quite difficult to get because they're either going to be legendary Pokemon, shadow Pokemon, or even shadow legendary Pokemon, and the remainder of them actually require legacy movesets. So when it comes down to it, it's actually a really great idea to build a team of Typhlosion as temporary fire-type attackers if you don't have that many on your team currently. So what I mean by this is that you just want to catch and evolve high-level Cyndaquil regardless of the IVs. Like, if you're unsure what a Pokemon level is, just look at the Stardust required to actually power it up. For example, a level 20 Pokemon would cost 2,500 Stardust, whereas a level 30 Pokemon would cost 5,000 Stardust to power it up. Level 30 is also going to be the max level that you can catch in the wild unless you have the Sunny Weather boost, which then it would actually increase to level 35, and that would cost 8,000 Stardust to power it up. Now personally, where I live, it's actually summertime right now, so there is a high probability that we're going to be getting sunny weather on the table here. There's also increases the potential of getting hundos, since the IV floor is going to be automatically raised with the weather boost as well. Unfortunately though, this does make it a little bit more difficult to get good IVs for PvP, so that is the downside, but honestly I would rather have a better chance of getting a hundo and potentially even a shundo with the weather boost opposed to PvP. Now I know a lot of you guys appreciate when I do the perspective between levels, so I'm going to go over that right now. So let's talk about the best fire type attacker in the game currently. Non-mega, that's going to be Reshiram with Fusion Flare. This is a legendary Pokemon with a legacy moveset, so that is going to require an Elite TM. Now, something more accessible would be a Pokemon like Chandelure, which actually evolves from Litwick. Now, if I'm being honest here, Litwick isn't really that accessible either, but compared to the other Pokemon in the Fire-type category, at least the top Fire-type Pokemon, it's a lot more accessible than everything else. So for that reason, that's why I'm going to be using Chandelure as a comparison here. So assuming that you guys had the Weather Boost and you caught a level 35 Typhlosion, regardless of the IVs, this is going to be the same power potential as a level 30 Chandelure. Now, Chandelure used to be one of the top Fire-type Pokemon in the game a few years ago, so the fact that you wouldn't need to spend any Stardust and you could potentially just build some really high-level Typhlosion with Blast Burn from this Calm Day is pretty fantastic. Now, of course, for veteran players watching this, you probably have already accumulated a good number of Legendary and Shadow Fire-type attackers in the game, so this isn't going to be something that you personally need to focus on, but for any new/returning players watching this is actually far better than you would think just due to accessibility amongst the other Fire-type Pokemon. So yeah, Typhlosion for the Raid/Gym meta, actually a really strong budget type pick. Now, while Typhlosion actually has some great meta relevance in the Raid/Gym meta as a temporary Fire-type attacker for your raid teams, it actually has a lot more use in PvP thanks to it actually getting Thunder Punch from the most recent GPL season update. Its main league formats are going to be in Great League and Ultra League. In the Great League, it currently ranks at number 243, with the Shadow variant being relatively close as well. And then in the Open Ultra League, it currently ranks at number 113, with again the Shadow variant being pretty close to it. Now I know what you're thinking, Typhlosion ranked in the top 250 for the Open Great League, that seems kind of high. But you guys just gotta trust me on this, Typhlosion is definitely worth using. I personally have already used it during this season, and it is really good. Now for those of you guys who are unfamiliar with Great League and Ultra League IVs, these are different from raid IVs, so you don't really want the hundo. Instead, you actually want low attack and high defense and high stamina IVs. The reason for this is because you actually want to maximize stat product based on Pokemon level. I'm not going to get into this too much, but I will have a search string in the description down below that you guys can quickly use to find good IVs for PvP. Now, like I mentioned earlier, guys, Blast Burn is crucial for Typhlosion. You pretty much can't run this Pokemon without having this moveset, and Typhlosion actually has two different playstyles, but that's more relative to the fast move. Now, this isn't highlighted on PvPoke since the recommendation is to go with Incinerate as the fast move, but it also has access to Shadow Claw, which gives it some pretty good coverage in a lot of other scenarios. So we're going to take a look at Typhlosion right now in the Open Great League with these different scenarios. So we have two different versions of Typhlosion. We have one with Incinerate and then one with Shadow Claw. Now we also have the Shadow variants as well, which definitely make a big difference in my opinion when you actually use Incinerate. So we're going to be going up against the Open Great League meta. I have set it to optimal IVs for both of them, and then we're also going to be using the 1 versus 1 shield scenario for a baseline. We see here though that the first major win, or the first major difference, is that Shadow Typhlosion with Incinerate actually takes the Dugong win. Now we also can see that against Feraligatr, and this is a pretty top pick in the Great League and the Ultra League, but again, this is focused on the Great League right now. We see that Shadow Typhlosion actually takes the win against Feraligatr, and regardless if you go with Incinerate plus Shadow Claw, it still pretty much has the same outcome. Now this is actually pretty important because what this actually highlights instead of the fast move is that Thunder Punch is the key difference here. At least on the Shadow variant, it actually has a little bit more power to it, which again, definitely flips the matchup opposed to the regular Typhlosion. Now if we see here against Gligar, which is again one of the top picks in this meta right now, we have some very interesting matchups, right? So we have a regular Typhlosion with Shadow Claw plus Blast Burn and Thunder Punch. This one gets really close to actually, being pretty even to the Gligar matchup, which means that you have potential to actually flip this because it's so close. Now, if we take a look at Shadow Typhlosion with Shadow Claw, this one actually wins the matchup against Gligar, which is pretty big. But if we take a look at Shadow Gligar versus regular Typhlosion wins this matchup, where Shadow Typhlosion actually loses this matchup significantly. This is why I think it's so important to actually highlight these differences, because that right there is a game changer. Like, winning the matchup against regular Gligar opposed to Shadow Gligar, and depending on which one you actually see more often, that could be a big reason to why you want to go with the Shadow or potentially even the regular. Let's continue to move on here. So we actually have one big matchup right here that the regular Typhlosion gets with Incinerate, and that's going to be against Lickitung, which is actually one of the top Great League Pokemon to use currently. So that's actually a pretty big win difference right there, because all the other Typhlosion variants don't actually take that matchup, only the regular one with Incinerate plus Blast Burn and Thunder Punch. Now we can also see against Mandibuzz, you do want to go with Incinerate over Shadow Claw because that actually takes the matchup, whereas, both variants, the regular and the Shadow version, they both lose it with Shadow Claw. Let's keep moving forward here. So one big difference between, all the Typhlosion is that the Shadow version with Incinerate actually loses the matchup against Medicham with Counter plus Ice Punch and Dynamic Punch. Now, one thing I really want to point out here with Medicham is that the movesets can vary, and personally speaking, as someone who does use Medicham, I personally run it with Counter plus Ice Punch and Power Up Punch, not Dynamic Punch. I feel like Dynamic Punch is just too much of a long charge move, and it's kind of like running Psychic, like you have to use up a lot of energy there, whereas Power Up Punch can really make a big difference over the long term of a match. There's definitely a lot more in-depth analysis that could be done between Typhlosion and Medicham, but just for the sake of this video, Shadow Typhlosion with Incinerate is the only one that loses a matchup against the current meta Medicham. The next big matchup difference here is going to be against Registeel, so every single Typhlosion does pretty well except for the Shadow Claw variant in the regular form. This is the only one that actually loses quite significantly. Like the rest of them are pretty dominant wins against Registeel. Now if we take a look at the Sableye matchup, the only one that actually loses against it is going to be the regular Typhlosion with Incinerate. Now against Alolan Sandslash, obviously, you know, the one with Incinerate is going to take the matchup there because it is double weak to Fire-type moves. Now against Galarian Stunfisk, we actually have some very interesting scenarios. So regular Typhlosion with Shadow Claw actually takes this matchup, but just slightly. Like it just barely takes this matchup, which means it could also lose this matchup just as easily if you don't have the right IV spread on it. Now not to mention, Shadow Typhlosion with Incinerate also gets the closest to actually taking this matchup, whereas Shadow Typhlosion with Shadow Claw actually loses this matchup significantly. So I'm pretty sure that has a lot more to do with its lack of bulk compared to the regular Typhlosion, but that's pretty big because Galarian Stunfisk is a pretty common Pokemon that you do see in the Open Great League. Now against Talonflame, the regular Typhlosion with either Shadow Claw or Incinerate both lose those matchups, whereas the Shadow version actually takes both of them regardless of the fast move. Now against Umbreon, the only one that actually takes the win here is going to be Shadow Typhlosion with Incinerate. So again, Shadow Typhlosion, whether you run it with Incinerate or Shadow Claw, seems to be picking up a little bit more wins compared to the regular, at least that's what I'm noticing here. And then regarding the rest of the matchups here, nothing really changes too much, but if we look at the overall win/loss ratio for all the Typhlosion, we can see that regular Typhlosion with Incinerate plus Blast Burn and Thunder Punch gets an 18 to 23. The Shadow Claw variant gets 17 to 24. That means that the regular with Incinerate is actually slightly better than the Shadow Claw variant, but again, they do pick up different matchups. So depending on what you're seeing in the overall meta, that is going to impact how you actually want to run this. Now comparing this to the Shadow though, we can see here that it does pick up a few more wins. It has a win/loss ratio of 21 to 20. And then the Shadow Claw variant has a 19 to 22. Again, they do have their pros and cons here, so it really just depends on what you're seeing in the overall meta, but strictly comparing regular Typhlosion to Shadow Typhlosion is actually a little bit better. Now, we do want to take a look at the Open Ultra League meta as well, so we're going to rerun these stats, and, you know, again, this is definitely going to have some different play in the Open Ultra League, so let's take a look at what we got here. No noticeable differences at first, but the big one is going to be against Defense Deoxys. So against Defense Deoxys, the only one that actually takes this win, and I think for obvious reasons, it's going to be Shadow Typhlosion with Shadow Claw. I feel like it just gets off a little bit more damage opposed to all the other regular options. Like even a regular Typhlosion with Shadow Claw, it's not that different from the Incinerate options, whereas, you know, Shadow Typhlosion actually has a little bit more damage going for it. And I think against Defense Deoxys, it can tank the moves fairly well. I mean, that's how we actually see the matchup flip here. Next up, let's take a look at Gly's score. So we can see here that Shadow Typhlosion takes the matchup regardless of the fast move, but regular Typhlosion loses both of them. But Incinerate regular Typhlosion actually gets really, really close. So that one has the potential to flip a matchup if you potentially get a fast move through. Now, Golisopod isn't a Pokemon I typically see in the Open Ultra League, but I guess it is out there. And in the case that you actually run into one, Shadow Typhlosion with Incinerate actually takes the matchup here. So if you do end up running into this Pokemon in the Open Ultra League, the Shadow variant for the Incinerate option is going to be the one that you ideally want to have. The regular version doesn't really quite make it, and then the Shadow Claw variants, they lose pretty bad. Now the next matchup win here is going to be against Greedent with, again, the Shadow variant with Incinerate taking that win right there. Now, the next big one, and this one's actually pretty big because Gyarados is quite a common Pokemon, the regular Typhlosion with Incinerate actually loses this matchup, but just barely, whereas all the other options, including the Shadow with Incinerate, take this matchup pretty consistently. Now against Jellicent here, the Shadow Claw variant for the regular Typhlosion actually is going to take the matchup there. Now against Mandibuzz, it does make sense that the Incinerate option for the Shadow Typhlosion takes the win here, whereas the regular one just doesn't have enough damage going out to actually flip that matchup. Now against Alolan Muck, you do want to have the Incinerate options for either the Shadow or the regular opposed to the Shadow Claw variant. And the same can be said for Obstagoon as well. Now the exception here is going to be against Pidgeot though, where a Shadow Typhlosion with Incinerate does take this matchup. So basically what I'm seeing right now is that Shadow Typhlosion in the Open Ultra League meta is pretty damn good against most of the meta. Now what's actually interesting here against the Alolan Sandslash matchup is that Shadow Claw regular Typhlosion actually takes this matchup despite losing this in the Open Great League, but the Shadow variant loses this one significantly. Now against Skeledirge, we can see here that the Shadow Claw variant takes the matchup for obvious reasons because Skeledirge is a Fire and Ghost type Pokemon, so Incinerate really doesn't do that much against it. Now against Steelix, the only one that loses this matchup is going to be regular Typhlosion with Shadow Claw. All the other versions do take this win. And then taking a look at Talonflame, we can see here that regular Typhlosion actually takes the win, but Shadow Typhlosion does not. Now we have two more key differences here, and that's going to be against the Umbreon matchup and the Walrein matchup. So for the Umbreon matchup, regular Typhlosion with Incinerate takes this win right here. And then against Walrein here, we can see here that Shadow Typhlosion with Incinerate is the only one that takes this matchup pretty clean. So amongst the 4 Typhlosion here in the Open Ultra League, it's pretty clear who the winner is here. So Shadow Typhlosion with Incinerate plus Blast Burn and Thunder Punch is going to be the best option that you can go with. I mean, clearly guys, 23-17 win/loss ratio. Now with that being said, regular Typhlosion does do decently well with Incinerate plus Blast Burn and Thunder Punch. The Shadow Claw variant doesn't really have too much play here compared to the other options in the Open Ultra League. I think it has a little bit more play in the Open Great League, but when it comes down to the Open Ultra League, you definitely want to run Incinerate on either of the options for the regular or the Shadow. And then again, between the different Shadow options, I feel like they do have different play, but Incinerate is going to be superior for sure. Now one additional reason why I think Incinerate is ranked a little bit better in the overall meta is because if you're actually able to sneak a fast move through due to your opponent incorrectly timing their charge moves, this can actually give you a pretty big lead due to the extra energy generation. Like I mentioned earlier, I've been using Typhlosion this season myself, and depending on the team build, I've actually alternated between both of these fast moves, either Shadow Claw or Incinerate. To make my life easier though, I also have 2 different Typhlosion builds, one with Shadow Claw and then one with Incinerate. That way I don't have to go through and keep using my fast TMs. Now before Thunder Punch was actually added onto Typhlosion, it did suffer from not having a spammy charge move, but now combined with Incinerate, all it takes is actually 2 Incinerates and then you can actually throw a Thunder Punch. Now with the Shadow Typhlosion, this is a huge deal, guys. If you have a Shadow Cyndaquil with the right IV spread and Frustration already TM'd away during a Team Go Rocket event, I would strongly encourage you to build this. Even if you don't have the right IV spread on your Shadow Typhlosion, I would still encourage you to at least evolve them and just have Blast Burn on the sidelines, because I think a bad IV Shadow Typhlosion is still probably going to be better than, you know, a good IV regular Typhlosion. But again, like due to accessibility, most players probably don't have this and they probably don't have Frustration already TM'd away. Now even though Shadow Typhlosion is a little bit more glassy as a Shadow, I just think the increased damage is a massive game changer for it in the overall meta. Like again, if you're able to sneak and Incinerate through, it has a much bigger impact compared to the non-Shadow Typhlosion. I've seen it firsthand. It honestly almost feels unfair. Now with that being said, I wouldn't actually recommend building Shadow Typhlosion for the raid/gym meta with the exception of one specific build. Now the reason for this is because of the high cost of Stardust and diminishing returns compared to the other fire type attackers. Like the catch and evolve strategy I mentioned earlier for regular Typhlosion isn't applicable for the Shadow Pokemon, so I mean it doesn't really work here. But with that being said, like there is one build that I would strongly recommend if you have the right IVs on it, because this is going to be useful in both raids as well as PvP. That is going to be Shadow Typhlosion for the Open Ultra League. Now once again, we already saw the Shadow Typhlosion in the Open Ultra League with Incinerate plus Blast Burn and Thunder Punch is going to be a beast. But keeping that in mind, the CP limit for the Open Ultra League is going to be 2500, which means that Shadow Typhlosion is going to be powered up to around level 35, which actually puts it on the same level as a Shadow Moltres at level 30. Now for those of you guys who don't know, Shadow Moltres is one of the best fire type attackers in the game. Now again, this isn't going to be as good as Referral with Fusion Flare, but it's going to be significantly better than a lot of the other fire type attackers out there. So ultimately, when it comes down to it guys, the best build from this comm day is going to be Shadow Typhlosion with Incinerate plus Blast Burn and Thunder Punch. You're going to get meta relevance in both the raid/gym meta as well as the PvP meta. It's literally one of the best Pokemon that you can get from this comm day. Despite the popular opinion to actually hate on every single one of the PvP focused events, I think this comm day is actually another really underrated one, and I'm not just saying that because I love Typhlosion either. Like you guys saw the meta analysis for both the raids as well as PvP. Like due to accessibility, many new/returning players can't get their hands on meta relevant fire type Pokemon right now. So this is going to be fantastic for him. On top of that, Typhlosion and Shadow Typhlosion both have so much relevance in the Great League and Ultra League metas thanks to it getting Thunder Punch this past season in GBL. We're also going to be getting a 2x catch Stardust bonus along with an experience bonus, which is good for any grinders who just want to accumulate a lot more resources and just kind of work towards level 50. I'm probably not going to be using star pieces or lucky eggs myself, but again, those Stardust gains and XP gains will definitely add up if you're going to be grinding out this comm day. The only downside here, very similar to Gumi comm day, is that we're not going to be getting a double comm day with the Hisuian form, which was definitely a missed opportunity, but again, like overall, this comm day is really, really good, and I feel like a lot of people are totally going to sleep on it. Now with that being said, that pretty much covers everything you guys need to know for Cyndaquil comm day classic, but as always, I'd like to go through some additional tips and tricks, so let's go through those right now. So first up, let's go over the fast cast trick. Most of you guys probably already know how to do this, but for any new or returning players watching this, I highly recommend learning this to increase your catching speed. If you ever wonder how some players catch so many Pokemon during these comm days, this is how they're doing it. I'm going to leave a link to a full video tutorial in the description down below. The next thing I recommend is creating a search search tag for all the Cyndaquil that you plan on evolving. Now you can quickly check for good IVs by typing in 3-star, and then you can quickly check for hundos by typing in 4-star. Now when it comes down to PvP IVs, I recommend using the search string in the description down below. Now Mega Evolutions, which ones do you guys want to focus on? So Cyndaquil is going to be a pure fire type Pokemon, so Charizard, X or Y, Houndoom, Blaziken, and Groudon are all going to be excellent options to go with. Whichever one of these you guys have at Mega Level 3, prioritize that one over the others for increased candy and extra large candy. Keep in mind that we're not going to be getting a 2x catch candy bonus or an increased chance to get extra large candy during this event, so if you really want to grind out those extra large candy, I personally do, then you really need to have this Mega Level 3 Pokemon active. Now when it comes down to storage space, I generally recommend having a minimum of 100 open spots and ideally 250 plus. If you guys are still having trouble, then I recommend checking out my full storage management guide linked down below. Now when it comes down to bag space, I recommend having a minimum of at least 200 red, grade, and ultra balls, and ideally 500 plus. Now again, guys, we're not going to be having the 2x catch candy bonus for this event, so I recommend having anywhere from 25 to 50 pine nut berries. You're definitely going to accumulate a lot of candy just playing the regular comm day, but especially for those people who don't have that much time to play, having the pine nut berries is really going to speed up the process. Now for those of you guys who can't actually go out and spin Pokestops before this event, the best way to actually get items outside of that is going to be by opening gifts from your friends every single day. You can open up to 30 gifts every single day, and seriously, it makes a huge difference restocking your Pokeballs before an event like this. And not to mention, you probably want to save your Pokeballs for the upcoming Go Fest as well, so grind this event hard, but then you definitely want to replenish those as soon as you can. Now because this is going to be a Comm Day Classic, and considering how many people are probably going to be out for it, not that many, but at least some people, this is going to be a really good time to get a group together and do some Shadow Raikou raids after 5 p.m. once the event ends. Like, Shadow Raikou is available on the weekends only, and after this month, we're probably going to get Shadow Entei again. But again, guys, for those who don't know, Shadow Raikou is the best electric type attacker in the game currently. Now, unlike regular Comm Days where the second stage form will appear in raids, this isn't going to happen for a Comm Day Classic, so make sure to take advantage of whoever is around and get some Shadow Raikou raids done. Like, seriously, you could potentially get a Shadow Shiny. Now, for those of you guys who don't know where to grind during events like this, I highly recommend going to Pokestop dense areas and or cluster spawns, so parking lots, grocery stores, superstores like Walmart, Sam's Club, Costco, etc. School campuses are pretty good. College campuses, not school campuses. College campuses are also pretty good. Next up, let's talk about the 2x catch Stardust bonus. So this is still a good time to use a star piece in the game, but it's definitely not the best because we do get 3x catch Stardust bonuses during some of the main comm days. Now, for those of you out there who have extra start pieces and you don't really mind using them during a comm day like this, you ideally want to be using them with the fast catch trick to catch as many Pokemon as possible. And some other ways to actually maximize that start piece would be if you have any field research Pokemon stacked, you guys can actually catch these during the downtimes when you have no spawns around you. And then if you're moving at a decent pace, your incense should be getting you new Pokemon spawns every 30 seconds. So make sure that you guys are at least moving around. Otherwise, if you're stationary, you only get new incense spawns every 5 minutes, which is pretty bad. And then finally, if you have any special research or GBL Stardust rewards, this would actually be a great time to redeem those as well. Now, what about a Lucky Egg? Do you want to have one of these active as well? So we do have the 2x catch experience bonus, so it's not like a bad time to take advantage of the experience gains. I feel like your main focus should be on the Stardust gains. So that being said though, all the tips I just mentioned for the Stardust grinding will pretty much go hand in hand here, so to really add on to this, the only thing that you could do would be to claim any friendship experience or special research experience if you've been saving them up, and then after that just catch as many Pokemon as you possibly can, really aiming for those great and excellent throws consistently. I mean, probably more for great throws because excellent throws do take a little bit more precision and timing. Next up, let's talk about using Spatial Rend. Is it actually worth using during this comm day? So if this were a 3x Stardust bonus, I would say that it is worth using Spatial Rend, but because it's only a 2x catch Stardust bonus, I'm actually going to opt against using this for this comm day. To be honest, I just feel like it's not going to be worth it. Like, you're not going to get enough Stardust back from grinding, even if you're going like really hard. It's barely going to be worth it. Next up, let's go over the Pokemon Ranger Medal and getting Platinum on this. So the tasks during comm days are fairly easy to complete, but it's also really easy to forget about them. Make sure that you clear your research tasks before starting the event, and then check them about every 5 to 10 minutes if you guys are going to be around a lot of Pokestops. You can also run away from the Pokemon encounters and stack these up to 100 Pokemon in your field research stack, but again, because we do have the 2x catch Stardust bonus, you might just want to redeem those during this comm day. Now finally, let's go over the Picnicker Medal. So you essentially just want to drop lure modules at your most popular grind spot right when the event starts. Basically, the way that this works is that you get 1 point every single time somebody else catches a Pokemon off your lure module, and in the right location, you can make some insane progress towards this medal, especially since your lure module is going to be lasting 3 hours long during this event. With that being said, that pretty much covers everything for this comm day classic. I hope you guys go out there and get a lot of Typhlosion. Do it for me at least. I mean, Cyndaquil is my boy, so yeah, definitely need some love during this comm day. Other than that, guys, if you want to check out some more content, I'm going to recommend these 2 videos right here, but before you go, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you all real soon in the next one.